Okie dokie, my turn to explain a little bit about the garden. Over here on the back side of the porch, this timer runs the irrigation for the whole garden behind the back of the porch. We had so much rain that I turned off the water that feeds the irrigation system here, and it's all pretty wet, so I'm thinking there's a chance that I won't turn it on before I leave. But that means that the fuchsia baskets aren't getting any water either, and they will likely need hand watering once a day if the irrigation is turned off. And you can see that the ground's pretty soggy, so my inclination is that I won't turn it back on again. If you see that things are starting to get dry again, you get a bunch of nice warm weather. It's just this this switch here turns the water on, that goes through that hose and it feeds the timer that's under this litter box, which is set to run every 4 days. May not be exactly the day you turn it back on again, but within 4 days it certainly would have run. For hand watering, you can just use the grey hose. I usually just leave it string out along the garden. It's easy not to have kinks in it, and you can water the fuchsia baskets. The little fountainy thing here, I don't put the well water into that because it's too hard and leaves a nasty ring around the fountain. It runs on solar, so sometimes it's actually not running unless it's sunny. If it does need topping up, and I don't think it will, I would use the water out of the house. The faucet that's on the corner of the house here by the barbecue is the tank water, and it would be fine to top it up with that. Out here in this garden, this square bucket, probably the roots of this thing are actually in the ground, so it probably doesn't need much water, but this is rosemary, help yourself to that. And this here is oregano, help yourself to that. Well and truly buried. I would suppose that this pot's probably rooted itself as well, so it probably doesn't need any supplemental water. Over here, I've also turned the irrigation off for this timer, which runs sprinklers here and also in the front garden, also under here. This timer is fed by this tap. So at the moment this tap's turned off, but again, if you see that the garden's starting to get dry, you can turn that back on again and it will just start to run again every 4 days. Apple tree, help yourself to apples. The ones that fall off are pretty tasty. The skins are tough, but the insides are really yummy. Just cut around the bugs and bits and pieces. The variety is Spartan. It doesn't really store that well, so if you pick up some apples, eat them as soon as you can. That's a parsley plant there, help yourself to that. There's some basil, 3 basil plants in the end here, help yourself to those. Plenty of tomatoes on this tomato plant. These two, I did something to this bed and they're not actually all that amazing, but you're welcome to eat them. Bit sad really. Over here, another tomato and a volunteer. This funny little volunteer thing here is another yellow cherry, but there, this is a beefsteak, you help yourself to those. Swiss chard, if you like Swiss chard. I'm growing or waiting for the lettuce seeds to fall off these, so this is what this is starting to sprout here. Some volunteer lettuce. Help yourself to the peppers. This is kale. It's clearly far too thick, so I'm hoping that you like smoothies and that you'll pick kale for smoothies. Over here, yeah, again, just the tomatoes. If you like rhubarb, there's a couple of sticks of rhubarb in the fridge, and you could have that other big leaf that's there, make a rhubarb pie. There's a couple more kale plants here, if you prefer this kind. If you don't like it and it's starting to get too big, feel free to throw the lower leaves over the fence to the cows. Over here, there's a couple of zucchini plants. It turned off cold, so they're sort of slowing down a bit, but you probably will find an odd zucchini in here somewhere once in a while. There's one yellow one over there you can see that's looking pretty good. The onions have been harvested, they're in the porch, help yourself to those. And the strawberries, this is the tube of strawberries that will need water daily, almost regardless of the weather. This grey hose, the water's always on that one. you can just use that for watering. But if this damp weather continues, you probably don't have to water anything except the strawberries and the fuchsia baskets. This is another one of the irrigation components. This one feeds 2 sprinklers. There's a sprinkler on this corner and a sprinkler over by on the table over by the grape arbor. Again, it's turned off, and if everything starts to dry out, feel free to just turn this on. It's the one that goes around to the timer in the filter there. This grape arbor is the one that has the hanging paraphernalia for the hammock, except that now I see that the wasps and the fruit flies have attacked the grapes. So if you can find anything to eat there, it'll be berry by berry. And it probably is a bit too smelly to put the hammock there, but it's up to you if you feel inclined. There is a fig tree at the back. I think those figs aren't really ripe, and I don't think they'll ripen. There's a persimmon tree also not ripe, and then the kiwi fruit vine. These don't ripen at all here. I harvest them in November, so sorry, but you can't eat those. But there are some in the fridge that you can help yourself to. Let's see what else. The barbecue is this thing here. It's a pellet style. So over here is the pellet hopper. Inside it just looks kind of like a normal barbecue. And you can plug it into this outlet here, pull it away from the house. It turns on with this button, and you can change the temperature with this up and down, and then you can display the actual temperature or your set temperature by pushing this button a couple of times. If you're doing steak, probably as high as it will go is probably the right answer. If you're smoking salmon, as low as it will go, and then turn the extreme smoke on. Yeah, if you want more information about how pellet grills work, you can probably Google RecTech and find more instructions there. This faucet is the one I was referring to for that runs tank water, and that jug there is a handy one for filling the fountainy thingamajig, if in fact it gets low, but I'd rather think it won't. The only other thing that might need some water is this little plum tree back here. There's a couple of buckets that'll leave some water in those. Again, we've had quite a bit of rain in the last week, so everything's good and wet at the moment, but if it turns off dry, that might need some water. I think that's it.